just take the whole hour.
Okay. All right. All right. Welcome to the virtual brown bag. So this is a kind of free form. Well, we book a meeting, and then we also kind of have a section where it's free form for people to talk about whatever you want. Um, so today, Bryan Joseph, who's the creator of Elixirscript, is going to be talking about that, about whatever he wants to talk about that. We do take suggestions for people um, to either give talks or things that they would like to hear. I'll share really quick. There's a link to this form from the Slack, but please go ahead and fill it out if you would like to talk, or if you just want help in some other way, or if you want to request a talk or request that so we do something different. Please go ahead and fill that out. Just a reminder, all talks are recorded and posted on YouTube, so don't share anything that falls under NDA or so on. And Bryan, kick it off.
Yes.
All right. So today I'm going to be talking about Elixirscript. And Elixirscript is an Elixir to JavaScript compiler. It started about, I guess, a little bit over a year ago, and it's not quite ready for prime time, but it's getting closer and closer, and you can actually use it for a lot of things. But yeah, don't use it in production yet. Let me see. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, you should be able to share your screen.
There we go. Here we go. Yeah. So this is the repo for it, and what I'm going to do is just go through. First, I'm going to go through some of the code, and then some of the code that's written in Elixirscript, and then I can go through the process of how it goes from Elixir to JavaScript. So I have a project here. It's just a standard to do MVC app that I created for Elixirscript. And this is actually a Phoenix app too. Let's put that, state that. And this is, I just want to show off some of the features that Elixirscript has that are from Elixir. So one of the things I like about Elixir a lot is pattern matching. And so before, pattern matching was a big part of Elixirscript for a pretty long time. But at some point, I don't remember when, it was pretty recently, I kicked it up a notch and added support for pattern matching for JavaScript objects. So here you see a keyboard event, and that's actually a JavaScript object, the keyboard event. And I'm matching on the which key. And I have to do it like this because I basically, all right, so the way that you would make maps in Elixir are like this. But what this does is it creates a map with a key that's an atom. But JavaScript, by default, likes keys that are strings. So you can do it in Elixir, and the syntax is a little bit different. It'll be something like this. So that's why this looks like that.
Yeah, but we had to do the same thing with Phoenix with our parameters anyway. So
yeah,
that's pretty
and recently what I did was actually, let's see if it's in here. No, I created a helper function to make it easier to do the JavaScript type of map. So this would actually create. This is the macro that would actually like boil down to this syntax, but it looks a little bit more natural in JavaScript. But anyway, so this is a keyboard event that's coming from JavaScript, and I'm matching on 13, which is enter, And when that happens, I add whatever in the text box to the list of to-dos. And here's another thing I have to do. So everything that comes out of Elixirscript is immutable, but there are some times in JavaScript where you have to actually mutate the state of something. So there is this js.update macro that you give it an object, and then you give it a map of values that you want to update in the object, and that will make it so that you actually mutate the state of an object if you have to. But that doesn't work on anything that's actually created within Elixirscript. It's more for libraries where you have to update something for some reason. Like for instance, and I'm switching this. Well, I'll get back to that. Anyway, I'll show off this and this working. So this is just the Phoenix app, like I said. And it's using the Elixirscript Runs plugin, which Josh Adam created when he did the Elixirscript episode of Elixirscripts. And I recently updated it because there were some changes in the Elixirscript compiler, and it's a bit hacky right now, but it works decently. So it's just standard to-do app. Doesn't do anything special, but I mean, this is all written in Elixirscript, and it's all getting saved back to a server in a temporary in-memory database on the Phoenix side. That's about it for that particular part. Let's see. And here's another example of interacting with JavaScript. So I'm calling back to the server using the fetch API, and I'm doing that using window.fetch. And then this is all the promise, all that good promise stuff. And it works really well.
Dude, that's awesome. Calling out the JavaScript from the Elixirscript using the same server syntax that Elixir uses to call out to Erlang.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a something you get for free. I wish there was a way that I can actually control that, but like for instance, this would work the same exact way.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's see. Another thing this particular app shows is there is a virtual DOM that's part of Elixirscript right now. Like the plans are eventually to move it into a separate module, or come up with a different view layer that might be a little bit more agnostic. But this is using the virtual DOM library, and I don't know if any of y'all read the metaprogramming Phoenix book, which is actually how the idea of me doing Elixirscript in the first place came about. But in there's a chapter where Chris McCord takes, basically builds up macros using a list of HTML tags, and I basically took that idea and used it to create macros for HTML elements. And all these get converted into virtual DOM function calls. And this works really well. So everything you saw here is built using this. And one of the things I did also is created a view module. So what it does is it takes where you want where you want your view to end up in the HTML, a render function. So this and a starting basically initial state. And this is just so it's kind of like an agent or a gen server in that you have like an initial state and then you have some options, but the only option to support is a name. So I'm saying here, make this view have the name view. And so this is going to return, it actually just returns view. But if I didn't have anything here, it would return a process ID. And then I just call list to get the list of to-dos from the server. So that's a basic example of what it looks like. Let's see. I think there was something else I wanted to show in a different example. Still getting used to SpaceMax. I guess nothing much. Like I showed the updating. Well, here I definitely had to. I didn't have access. Well, by default I didn't have access to the image path, so I had to specify where the image path was here, and I couldn't do that without an update function. Oh, you can see here. This is something I want to show off. Recently, I got bit-string pattern matching to work. So, yay. And another thing is, so you can use, import, require, and alias from Elixir, but that really only works on the Elixir modules. So if you want to use ES6 modules, you would have to use this js.import macro, just because of the way JavaScript modules work, where you can give it like a name and then a path. The Elixirscript compiler, for the most part, knows where all of the Elixirscript modules are, so it doesn't need any of this, and actually builds all of this during the compilation phase. So that's about it for what the code looks like. Before I guess dive in, any other questions or any questions?
So I have some more macro level questions of what motivated you to do Elixirscript, and like where do you see it going in the future?
Actually, it was Chris McCord's book, Metaprogramming Elixir.
So to start off just as like a mental exercise, hey, I'm gonna learn macros by doing this.
Well, no, it was more like I had a couple of days off, and I wanted to use like an Elixirscript. I wanted like something to exist. I didn't want to actually make it, but I was hoping for some reason I just wanted to experiment to see like what kind of what it would take to actually do something like that, and I just kind of got stuck into doing it, and it's been more of a fun type of project than anything else. So that's where I spend a lot of my time, and it's more like leisure time because it's a pretty fun project to work on.
So I had a similar thing where I was like working on doing a lot of Elixir and Phoenix, and then I had to go to JavaScript land, and I was like, man, I need some pattern matching stuff. This is ridiculous. Someone needs to make an Elixirscript type thing, and that's where I discovered your repo, and I was like, yes. And so I've been cheering from the sideline because you showed that key press function, and I'm like, this is exactly why it is superior. Is because that is such a pain in the butt versus like that is so much easier to read and understand, and you're just like I don't care if it's not this, then do whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing that I miss the most too is pattern matching. And it like once you start using pattern matching, it's hard to not use it.
So you have it built into like with the Phoenix app. Like, have you talked? Like, has there been people discussing like how easy is it to bring that in and use that as sort of a default view sort of layer for people?
Not yet. I talked to Chris McCord just a little bit during ElixirConf. And I've actually started talking to Jose Valim a little bit more about the project and um, getting some advice from him on things here and there. And we actually want to try to share like the standard library modules between Elixir and Elixirscript. So I've been kind of working on basically whenever I encounter Erlang function calls in the modules, rewriting those into something that is, I guess, a JavaScript equivalent for the well, as much as possible. Um, so yeah, I've been talking to him more and more this year about it.
It just feels
But
like to me with the Phoenix stuff that you can like. I don't know many people who have Phoenix apps that are using the view part. Like Phoenix is just the backend with the API talking to whether an Ember app, React app, or whatever, or mobile, so forth. And I think it's just because like the technology has just changed to the point where a static view it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And you try bringing in some of these other systems, but it's still it gets to the point where it's like it might as well be separate. Like why am I trying to shove this JavaScript single page app inside Phoenix when I can just make it separate? But if it was Elixirscript and it was all together and he had some neat tie-ins, that would be kind of cool.
yeah, that would be cool. And speaking of, maybe, I mean, there might be a time when sharing some of the modules between like the server side and Elixir script might be a possibility. I guess in some ways it depends on what it is. You might be able to do it now. And one of the things I want to concentrate on in the future is getting a good story, getting a good plan around using macros within Elixir script code. So I guess having something like ClojureScript as a template of where you have your macros and and ClojureScript is like that with CLJ files, and then you have your ClojureScript code and like CLJS files, and the compiler just knows to grab the macros from there. And um, yeah, it's well macros right now as far as like creating them and using them in here. It's you can do it, but it's not the most straightforward thing. And um, that's one of the things I want to focus on is making that better.
So you've always mentioned macros multiple times with Elixir stuff. Like I'm vaguely familiar with the idea of macros, but like what would be a high level discussion of what it allows to do and what is good and bad with them and so forth, and who would need them?
So basically, they make it so that you can, I guess, write code with code. Um, what's the best way to say it? So um, that's all I got. It's basically like a function that you can use to write code with code.
Yeah, when I dabble with a little bit like and try getting some of the ESTs or whatever set up, and I was just getting kind of crazy, and I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to need this ever for my stuff. I assume like it's more of like a frameworky thing, similar to some of the Rails and running Ruby's like meta programming thing, where it's just like if you're building an app and suddenly you're like, what would solve our problem? Meta programming. You probably took a wrong turn somewhere.
Yeah, but they come in handy. Like for instance, you might want to make like a special macro like for testing that does some stuff before or after, and then actually calls the test. Um, or if you want to make a macro, one time I made a macro for an API. It had different um, resources, but all of the calls are pretty much the same. So I just made like a module. It wasn't even a module. It was like it was a using macro um, that took in some options, and using those options, it would create if you just add use whatever to macros for the resources, it would automatically create the functions for those resources. So it can save some time, um, but I wouldn't go like crazy with using them. But they can definitely be handy.
You have a question in the Q&A. How do you test a macro?
So the macro, I didn't think I was going to get so many macro questions. So a macro, you can test. What happens is during compilation of Elixir, it expands the macro, and so you can test it by just basically just by just calling the macro, um, or calling something that uses the macro, and so you can pretty much test it just like you would test a normal function. Oh, actually, if you want to test the output of a macro, you should be able to like test the AST that comes out of it. I'm not sure actually.
I would actually say like if you're writing a macro that's so complex you need to test it directly, you might be going in the wrong direction. Like that's like macros are meant to be like little convenience things for like little bits of to add bits of syntax. And if the code that uses them works, great. But I'm
So
sure, yeah.
so
I'm
no
sure
unit
that,
tests. It'd be an integration test of the macro.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So what is it? You're saying it's not production ready. What is production ready for you? Like what does that mean?
That's a good question. I don't know. I guess what it means is, I guess me as the creator, one, I'm actually using it in projects, which I'm not right now, just because every time I have some free time, I'm always like digging into this and not like creating a project. Um, Two would just be I would like to make it I guess easier to use. Um, and three, there are some things that are still like weird about it. It's not completely compatible with Elixir just yet. Like you can't use processes. Well, that's a whole other story. Um, Pretty much all of the special forms are here now, except for super and receive, and that goes along with not having process in it just yet. Um, I want to have more of the standard library defined in the working state, and I guess those are the big things.
so I so like what is something that it can do right now? Like the pattern matching is cool, but what are some other things it can do that look significantly different from the JavaScript version? Like I remember you were talking to me about like you had gotten processes working and stuff like that.
Oh, so that I do have a implementation of processes, but I haven't put it into the main project yet, just because it requires a lot of changes to things, and um, with me being like the only person really working on it, I kind of don't want to make those kind of big decisions just yet. Like for instance, it'll probably require defining a different strategy for JavaScript interrupt, possibly things like that. Let me see. So pattern matching is the big one. Um, let's see.
I think even just syntactically, the code is going to look different and cleaner. Because if we look even at just an example where you're setting up the DOM with macros, uh, this looks okay. Like could be tempted to write an app and do something with this. Meanwhile, like React without JSX or like Mithril and some of the stuff, I look at that and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to write my app that the view and calling that, Um, so that's what I think is a powerful aspect too. And the idea is so. I have a good group of Node friends, and one of the tenets that some really like about Node is the idea that we hire someone who does JavaScript, they can do the front end, back end, and they have to learn all these different languages. And being a journalist, I learned all these different languages, and I'm like, I don't see what the big deal is. And context switching is over us because I was like, even the JavaScript you write on the front end is different than the JavaScript you write in the back end anyway. Like it's just different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Front end knowledge is more important than specific language knowledge, and that's something actually I've been drilling with our interview team a lot because like we have a metric for like front end knowledge and like what does it mean? Does that mean iOS or JSX? I'm like the patterns, the general mindset. That's what I'm talking about. I don't care about the language. We'll figure that
yeah,
out separately.
exactly. And so yeah, so their thing is like, but to me, like the idea is if you could get I think the story of what is missing from the Phoenix land is the idea of like, well, the front end story is kind of weak, and so stuff I'm seeing here is like, man, if you were just writing Elixir, like imagine if your Phoenix controller passed to the view, and the view was Elixirscript, and that Elixirscript behaved a lot like a React Redux situation and was automatically connected to the socket and stuff. It'd be freaking killer. It'd be awesome. Like I wouldn't have to switch.
Yeah, and actually, one of the things I did with my presentation at I think it's this one. My presentation at ElixirConf was I showed off a kind of like a Redux style um, application using they don't have highlighting for this using just an agent which I have in here to store the state, and then there are actions, and actions are just maps, and so they would just have different function heads that would where are we at here dispatch, which would get the action, and then use that to update this, like update, return a new state um, using the state that was passed in and the action that was passed in, and it would just pattern match on those things and did whatever it had to do with depending on the action. So yes, it is very possible to do stuff like that.
Yeah, I was doing some Redux stuff this weekend, and I was like going through the case statement and the whole like the state. You have to do the dot 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 state and update it, and I was just like, this is so weird for JavaScript, but in Elixir, this like would be so easy and make sense. Like you wouldn't have this weird case statement. Just be like all these functions, you pattern match on the action type, and you can even pattern match on what the data you get passed in.
Yeah, I do like the idea of Elm a lot, but that's just one of the things. I don't know. I just like the Elixir way of the Erlang Elixir way of pattern matching, and I want that on the front end.
So what we need is for someone to win the lottery or get a bunch of money and then fund you to so you can work on this all the time.
That would be lovely. But right now, I mean, honestly, like the converting from Elixir code to JavaScript code, that part in and of itself is fairly straightforward. The actual hard part is saying, okay, I have this Elixir feature, and I want to translate that feature into something in JavaScript, and just going through the process of thinking through what would that feature, like how would you implement this feature in JavaScript, and then once you have that, like actually converting the code to JavaScript is pretty straightforward.
You want to show any of the macros you have, like any of the HTML, H1, and all that stuff, just sort of like see some Elixir code and see how it works? Because you're saying it's straightforward. I imagine it is, but to a neophyte like me, I'm like, I don't even know.
Let me see.
Well, and initially you wrote this in JavaScript, right, and then changed it so it's written in Elixir.
So a lot of the standard library modules right now are written in Elixir. So here you have, like for instance, this kernel is actually, this is all compiled to JavaScript. the things that are still in actually written in JavaScript are the special forms, like so things like case, con, for, try, and while, and also somewhere in here that was bit string, and then let's see, tuples. So those like special form things are still written within JavaScript, and those are converted in the translator. Well, let me see what's a good one. Maybe with, and those are, maybe that's not a good one. And those are translated from from JavaScript. I mean, not from Elixir, the abstract syntax tree form, into the JavaScript abstract syntax tree, which is then passed on into JavaScript. Let me see, a macro. So the one I was showing off earlier, the HTML macro, is all defined here. It all has like a tags. There's a tags text file. As I said, this is basically from the Metaprogramming Elixir book. Was a list of tags.
So you have H1 and that's it. I like to you have H1s.
Yeah, there's a bunch of tags in here, and during compile time, it goes and it gets that list. It turns it into a list of tags, like a list of things it can use in Elixirscript, and then it goes through all of those, and it creates macros for each of those. And you can see here, okay, it's using it's turning into virtual DOM function calls. And that's about it for that one.
How would you like people to contribute?
Go to the issues, and most of the issues I have there now are just things where I have to think through how to do them, and that is where I need the most help. It's just thinking through how to do certain things, and just coming up with a strategy to implement those.
So, but no one's using this yet, right? You don't have any real world feedback.
No, not really. So
how about just using
there's a couple.
Yeah. How about using it in non-critical scenarios? Like that might actually be very helpful, right?
Yeah, it's because you have your examples. Because I was thinking, okay, if someone built more of these examples out, that would be helpful. Because then it'd be like, hey, I was trying to make, write some Ember code with Elixirscript because I hate myself, and like, and I was running into this issue, and this is what was happening.
Yeah, there's one guy who was saying he was gonna try to write like a Electron app in Elixirscript, and there's another guy who he's making a game in JavaScript, and he said he wants to try to rewrite it in Elixirscript, and he wants me to help, and I'm like, sure. So that one project right there with the game might be enough to either flesh out some bugs or at least see of how feasible it is to like use.
So this was recent, was this like a while ago?
This is like as of like 3 days, maybe even 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So yeah. But I think I actually have to run now.
well, thank you for coming by and sharing the stuff with it. It's freaking awesome. So have me cheering for it, because I think I'm looking forward to when I don't have 2 projects and I can write everything in Elixir.
Yeah. Well.
All right, Brian. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and Brian's in the Slack.
All right, thanks.
Any questions from him? So see, we've got a couple more people joined. Let me explain real quick again how this is going to work. So with Hangouts on Air, we've got a couple limitations. Namely, we can have as many viewers as we want, and those viewers can use the Q&A. But we can have only 10 actual participants, like people with video and audio feed. So the way that we're going to manage it, at least for the time being, is we will post. The link on the main page is going to lead to the viewer link, and in the Slack we will post a meaning to the actual participants link, and kind of just ask people who to only use that link if they want to participate. So kind of to that end, and anyone can just go to the website and join the Slack. So that's not really. It's just really a minor impediment that hopefully will keep it under 10. So I do see we have a couple other people here.
Tim is a coworker. He's kept up to date on the stuff.
Yeah.
I was talking about Elixir stuff. And so he wanted to see what's going on.
Sure. Tim, Andy, do y'all have anything you want to share?
Sorry, I lost my voice and I'm sick, so I can't.
All right.
I just wanted to drop in. I'm sure I'll be more talkative in the future.
Cool.
I want to see if I can find. So I was messing with since Gantz talk. Took a look at some React Redux stuff. I'm gonna see if I can get some of this stuff set up to share.
You want me to go in the meantime?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. And I just want to make sure that everyone who wants to present gets a chance. Andy, did you have anything you wanted to share? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm going. Cool. All right. So first of all, shout out to Adam. I've been kind of using it a little bit, but I mostly use Sublime. I've been using it kind of more and more kind of for my fun time hacking stuff. And I've been getting more, and I'm seeing like a lot of the issues I had with it initially get resolved. I like it. I also want to give a call out to the trendy theme, which is kind of awesome. I really like this theme, where you can that's your code. It's really fun looking. So here's my kind of thing. I started a project. That in order to kind of talk about and showcase generators, and it kind of is evolving into this weird FRP thing. So I'm going to show the project in a bit. Let me kind of talk up how we got there with that project, and I'll actually showcase another thing, which is Wallaby.js, which if you do Node or really JavaScript, you should probably use this and pay for it. Because it's pretty darn cool. So let me create an example here. So I'm going to create a very simple test. And I will actually demonstrate what I mean about generators as well.
Has your side nav always been on the right hand, or is this a new thing you're trying to?
Oh, it just pops out there now. I don't know if that's something Adam did recently or I moved it somehow or what.
Yeah.
It's certainly not on purpose.
It's a total thing now. I was like, I thought you're about to go all Claudio, like massive productivity change thing.
Nah, I'm very unproductive. So I'm going to create a little generator here, and you create generator. Actually, I'll do it this way. Generator.
Is this a Mocha class?
Yeah, it's just Mocha.
Did you know that the context is actually passed between them all? Like
yeah, but I'm not going to use this. I hate this.
Screw you, this.
So we'll invoke it like that. So I want to kind of show how this works, and actually I'll create a callback too, so we can synon.spy. Okay. And I will just do back. Let's do this. Yield. Yield 1, callback. Yield 2, callback, whatever. So first thing I want to do is let me write this test, and says it does not call initially. So basically, we does not let's see, run to the first callback initially. And I want to kind of demonstrate at the same time how generators work and show this other thing called Wallaby off because it's pretty awesome. So in here, I'm going to write assert callback.args.length. What's it? Assert.equal 0, comma. So now I would have to like drop out of this assert. I would have to drop out of this and actually run my test. Now, so instead I installed this utility called Wallaby, which is a continuous test runner. And it's going to start, I have it in trial mode because I haven't paid for it. But I do think if I did more work on this, I would definitely be using it. And we can see it's running. This is, actually, what is this? Oh, ESLint is complaining, but that's fine. And actually, I don't even need that right there. So, and we can see that this is tagged as green and it's passing. Okay?
So, okay, whoa.
Yeah. So what this is showing,
Rewind.
what this is showing me right now is this test is passing.
Mm-hmm.
It's green. And then everything else that's tagged as green was run as part of a passing test. Everything that's tagged as gray was not run.
So, okay, so Wallaby is plugging into where's Wallaby?
It's an Atom plugin that'll do this. Now they have plugins for like every other IDE out there as well, but I've been using it with Atom. So I'm sure it's a standalone. I think it's actually a Node application, but it runs. It's meant to be used through the IDE. So so let's do this now. Let's take the next step. Describe. So, and you can see kind of errors appear as I'm typing. I'm not even hitting save yet. I describe. Take a step through the generator. So we're going to go ahead and say before. Well, we'll just do this. Actually, yeah. So we want to take that first step in the generator. So the thing that we want to happen is.
Do you call like next or something? I can't remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what it is. It's assert equal. I want it to be 1. And actually, you'll see getting what is it? It's yellow. Why is it yellow, actually? Line is not covered, or... Wait, line... Oh, right, because I didn't write the test.
Yeah, you need to...
Runs to first step. There we go. Expected 1 to equal 0, which is very cool. Before each, we want it to run, so we're going to add it.next. And now it runs.
That's crazy.
Yeah, here's the thing that's really cool. Like when you're actually debugging code, you're like, well, did it actually run to this yield 2 line? What is stuff? You can go here and go console.log foo. Appears right there.
What?
Yep. Or callback. What is my callback? Callback.toString. Oh, it's got that.
Yeah.
It's got that. But like it's super useful. I use this throughout the entire thing, like just debugging. Like I had to actually leave my this thing in order to debug very, very few times, which is crazy cool. So okay. And then what? Let's see. One more thing. I'm gonna create a new block. Take another step through the generator. Let returned result yielded result. What is it complaining about? They spelled it wrong.
Yeah, spelling is a thing.
All right, so then change this to 2 because we want it to be 2, but it expects value to be yielded back. So, and then we could say, actually, I'm not even sure what it should be. So let's do console.log yielded result. So where it
Yielded.
I probably spelled it wrong. Yeah. Is that it? Unexpected console. This is my ESLint complaining. Iterator defined, but is never used. Yeah. See, this is the problem. If you're running in trial mode, you have to like either restart it or click on that like every once in a while. Wait. What is oh. Ew. I screwed something up, right? Because I was calling it. So let's see. So you just go, okay, console.log object.keys iterator? Whoa. Oh, it's undefined. Oh, because I screwed all sorts of things up. Okay, so now it's better. Now it's better. Unexpected. Oh, right. It's not actually going to run until I do an assertion. So do assert dot equal yielded result. Oh, and right there, I already see what it is. So that value of undefined done is true. So actually, I ran too far. I think I wanted yield, something like that. Yeah. So see, value is 2. That's what I actually wanted. Yielded result dot value is 2. I spelled it wrong again. So
the peach colors, like this is a line that got called in a failing test.
Yeah. Well, yeah. A peach color would be one test was it was both failing and successful depending on which test you wrote. But that's totally cool because we have exclusive tests, right? So you go to it.only,
yeah.
And now you're running just that one test, and you could actually verify stuff. And yeah, so it's super cool. It's $100. Seems if I was doing full-time Node or full-time JavaScript, really, I still might buy it, but it would definitely be worth paying for it if I was doing like full-time Node, without a doubt.
I think it's pretty easy to say that.
Yeah.
You go. Will this save me an hour?
Yeah. Yep.
Yes. I can
So,
pay for it.
So now I want to show you actually what I use this to write. So it's this library, GymGen, because so iterators itself, you kind of get the idea. Okay, we can take steps and we can send values back out, and actually you can send values back into the generator too. So if you wrap it, right now I'm just running it manually through calling iterator.next and .next, but you could imagine running a function that would call that next step for you, and then making decisions based on what is yielded back and passing stuff into the generator. And what you get is kind of a weird little inverted flow of control type thing. So I've created GymGen, which is a very simple library. It's like this long with no dependencies at the moment. So it's like 102 lines long with some docs on it, 0 dependencies. And and at first I was just playing around with it. I was like, you know what? I wonder if I could implement stuff like throttle and debounce with it, which turns out pretty darn easy to do. So for example, here's an implementation of throttle. So I had to introduce a concept into there, and a concept of a signal. And a signal is basically a factory for promises. It's just an object that has a create promise method. So what you do is you invoke a generator in either GymGen or invocable GymGen, and then invocable GymGen is just going to return back a function, and you get a signal, and you can have a signal that triggers every time the function is invoked. So here's throttle. You basically wait until in the invoked signal until you're invoked, and then you wait for a timeout signal. You wait until a timeout occurs, and then you just call the function, and then you loop, and just keep doing that over and over again. Debounce is a little more complex, but not super more complex. You wait for the function to be called. You wait for a timeout. You have a timeout, and then you wait either for a timeout or for it to be invoked again. And if the thing that happened was that the timeout happened, then you run the function, you wait for the next invoke signal, and you loop over again. You want to invoke the function only after it's been called a certain amount of times. Just wait for it to be invoked, and after that, go ahead and just run the initial function and pass back a thing that came in. So it turns out pretty easy to implement these things, and this is not something I've seen like any other library or any other language doing. It kind of inverts how you think about these things. It also, outside of the specific realm of like let's implement debounce, ends up being kind of cool. So here's a pretty simple example. Actually, go ahead and open up the live demo. So we got messages. Oh, right. I need to run it with JS, don't I? And you can go ahead and publish messages, and the messages fade out after about 3 seconds. And if I hover or move my mouse over the message, it'll kind of stay up while other messages fade out. And then as soon as I move it off, it'll fade out. So that's a lot of set timeouts and blah, 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 especially if you want to do animations, in which case basically the rules are going to be that, okay, let's create that message, put it in the DOM, then after 3 seconds has elapsed with no interaction, put a hidden class on it, then that will give CSS transitions time to fade it out, then after another second has passed, go ahead and remove it from the DOM. So here's kind of implementing, and this is JS-bin, so I don't have full ES6 in here, so it's not quite as nice. But here's kind of implementing it using GymGen. So we just wrap it in GymGen, pass in a generator, and basically that's going to give me a function called show notification. I can pass in a message. When it happens, it's going to go ahead and create an item, and then it's going to say, okay, here's what a timeout signal is. Here is, and then here are your interactions, either mouse move or mouse over. So just convert those to a signal, and I just say wait for whichever one happens first. Now, if the first one that happens is not a timeout, go ahead and keep looping, and each loop yields back. So you're just kind of looping until a timeout is reached. And once a timeout is reached, go ahead and add the hidden class, and go ahead and add the hidden class, and again wait another 1 second, and only then remove. And you can kind of accomplish that, and that like reads a lot clearer as to what the requirements actually are, as opposed to what we said before, as opposed to like how you would have to do with set timeouts and stuff like that. But let's say, okay, so I actually showed it to one of my coworkers. He was like, what about a requirement? Like, what if you hover over it while it's timing out? How would you change it to implement that? So here's a slightly more complex version of that. So we still have that first bit. So if those 3 seconds elapse, I up the timeouts a little bit just so I make it easier. Oops, gotta run with JS. So okay, it's gonna start timing out, fading out. Now I hover over and it comes back, and start fading out. Hover over and it comes back. So here we have that first part still. Okay, as long as it's so wait for a mouse move or a mouse over or for 3 seconds to elapse, and as long as 3 seconds haven't elapsed, just keep looping. But after that, go ahead and add that hidden class, and now you're really saying the whole thing is going to do while, because basically you're saying, okay, after that's happened, wait for either an interaction or for 2 seconds to have elapsed. And if the thing that happened was not 2 seconds have elapsed, so there was a mouse interaction, then start over. Well, when it starts over, it goes back to the beginning of the state machine and goes on from there. So this is kind of experimental at this point. There's still stuff in there that I need to work on. Let me see. Oh, right. I've been logging some issues with it, but I would love. First of all, I want to see like what programming languages. Like, surely I didn't come up with this idea. And I know Python has generators and Go has streams, but I've been showing this to people, and people are like, I haven't seen anything quite like this before. So I'm sure I didn't come up with it. Who else has been doing it? I think is a good question. And second, I still think it's a potentially very useful way to kind of invert how we're thinking about stuff, because it certainly inverts how you're thinking in the traditional JavaScript mindset. And I could see like integrating this with like Bacon.js or RxJS, even Knockout Computeds, and because basically what this is a sink for like kind of a terminal endpoint to allow some decision making at the end of a functional reactive programming chain, basically. So anyway, I'm putting it out there. I mean, in the basic scenarios, it is actually good to use, like obviously like this. Not everything works there yet, and you can kind of look at the issues and see what's up there. But I mean, the basics of it are solid. There's no dependencies. Heck, you can like there's not that much code. You can copy and paste it into your project and try to use it. And if it doesn't work for you, then I don't know, then don't use it. Here's some simple implementations and everything. But I mean, like it's 100 lines of code, and actually a good chunk of it, like that whole chunk of it, is dealing specifically with the scenario of when you want to return a function that when you invoke that function, you get an invocable signal on that function. So pretty cool stuff. Yeah, people should play with it and give me feedback.
I think it's still above my pay grade. I'm looking at them like, I like it. Like I can read your code. I'm just like trying to think of scenarios where I need to do that.
Well, okay, so specifically what I've come up with, because like I started to like implement Memoize, and I was like, oh, Memoize is dumb. It is actually harder with this. So I think the specific thing is when you need to integrate two different sources of signal, two or more different sources of signals, which is kind of what's happening in this, in unshow notifications, right? We're integrating the source of is a user interacting with this with the timeout source of a signal.
Yeah.
So anytime these kind of two streams of things, and you kind of need to integrate them and make decisions based on which happened or which happened first, or in what order, or what things were passed to them, I think at that point this gets really useful. And in UI programming, that's actually a lot of stuff. So I'm definitely going to be giving it a try in the future. And probably we'll be talking about this some more. All right.
Still pretty good exercise in just learning generators too. And
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's what I've been noticing lately with getting this more React Redux stuff. That man, like, just the 1 year I took a break from Node and JavaScript. JavaScript, like these were just ideas, and now it's like, look, these are all the libraries using it, and like you use it in your day to day. It's not just some like blog post about stuff,
Right.
Using decorators and classes and all that stuff. So I was like, this
all
is...
those things are dumb.
Yeah.
all of those features you just mentioned.
All those feature things that I don't like. Jim.
Yeah. Yeah. I think actually
still
this
pretty cool.
simplifies it a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're getting now at our dead time, so we'll just thanks Bryan again for coming and talking about Elixirscript. It was awesome. I think it's beginning to see what we could potentially do with that in the Phoenix side. I think I'm curious to see what it looks like in the future with it. But thanks George for sharing your Jim awesomeness and the Wallaby stuff, because now you just ruined my day, because now I'm like, I gotta hack on Wallaby. I gotta see this.
It's pretty awesome, yeah.
And next week we'll have Ben Sherman and from NS Screencast. And last time I talked to him, he was doing Swift with open source, like on Linux and stuff. But I really just told him, hey, talk about all this stuff, and I figured we can have questions about operating and running a screencast too, like what things he's learned. His site's totally written on Rails, and he's some other stuff too. He has a bunch of hobbies too, so we'll just pester him with all sorts of questions. Yep. All right, talk to you later, guys.
Yeah, join the site, join the Slack.
Yeah.
Fill out that form on there. Actually, we should put that form on the main page. Cool.
Okay, I'll do that. All right, later.